Hi, Dr. Smith. This is Gianna Reginato,
Emma Cody,
Lily Rink, Van Wyn.
and we did the calcium and vitamin D deficiency article. I guess just starting off, guys, how did you, initial thoughts on the article? Like, what did you think was interesting?
I thought that it really showed like deficiency in like calcium and vitamin D really well through mice, and it like with the key findings, like the mice with calcium and vitamin D deficiency exhibit like delayed fracture healing with slower like callus formation and mineralization. So that's just like something you apply to like everyone.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I really liked the fact that they compared not only just a control group to mice that were deficient, but a control group mice deficient in calcium and vitamin D diet, and they took a group of mice and had them deficient in calcium and vitamin D, but then gave them supplements.
That's what I
So
thought.
they like tested that like additional aspect of like, do supplements change
Yes.
the results?
Especially because how many people use supplements nowadays? It's just like extra
Exactly.
things in your
That's
diet
such
that
a
you know.
great key takeaway.
I actually like
Yeah.
it. I'm so curious about that particularly because like my dad is a doctor and he's like, he low-key like does not believe in like supplements. I've asked him, I'm like, hey, like I see all this like things on TikTok,
Oh,
whatever.
100%.
And I'm like, Dad, like, does this work? Like, will this
I
help
take
me?
supplements.
Like, so,
I
yeah,
know
like,
that.
I
I
think
take
they're vitamins, and he's like, there's no evidence proving that like some of the stuff people take, like, actually like go into your body
Yeah.
and like do anything rather than like surface level, like it goes through your digestive system.
Yes,
He's like, dude,
yes.
people probably just like poop out the supplements. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, I didn't think about that. But they tested this and it actually did have an effect.
Well, that's what I thought was cool was actually like the supplemental group, even though they started deficient, like in the end for some of the categories when they were testing on the graphs, like the supplemental was like actually higher.
Yeah.
With the bone. With like the bone, like density and thickness and stuff was higher than the control group who didn't even have the supplements, so it has to be doing something.
I thought it was nice that it was like they kind of pointed out the like importance of it, like saying 70% of fracture patients showed a vitamin D deficiency, and saying like there's very little research on that. And I wrote down that 3 billion people are vitamin D deficient, which is what they said, and there's like no research kind of on that. So I thought it was nice that they did the supplemental as well because it's very like
Well,
it's
especially
getting more
because
common.
we like don't go outside. Like I
No.
feel like I don't go outside anymore.
I'm
I'm
from
always-
Washington, so like this winter
Oh,
is
yeah.
like terrible because there's
Yeah.
literally no sun. It's like any chance like I'm available, like you were getting outside and all that. I think that's why like my mom's so strong on vitamins. She's like, you need to take your supplements like vitamin C, vitamin D, all that stuff, just because I mean we're not getting the natural vitamins.
exactly.
And
because
bone
we're-
health is never really like a no-win.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
we're
something
looking
that
at
like you would
educating
think of on a
everyone, so-
daily
Yeah.
It's just, I know. It's like the drink your milk, otherwise you're gonna have fragile bones. But it's just that's not even actually like the milk. Like growing up as a child, like, oh, you need to be strong because you need to drink your
I
milk.
did drink a lot of milk and I haven't broken any
Guys, I
bones,
never
not
drank
gonna
so-
lie. But it definitely isn't something that like they are like, oh, drink milk, but that's not even
something-
where you
that's-
get a lot of calcium from.
Well, you get the calcium, but you need the vitamin D
To,
to
like-
obtain the calcium.
Oh wait, didn't Dr. Smith said in class, didn't she say they add
They add
what is
vitamin
it?
D.
Yeah, what's it
into
called? The fake vitamin D.
just so
Synthesized
they
vitamin
can
D to
pair
the
it.
milk, yeah, so that you can
To-
absorb it. And I never knew that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, 100%. What I just like going back to what Lily was saying earlier of just
Yeah.
like how little research, I think that was like super eye-opening of the article itself of like the whole reason that they're doing this is because how strongly like there's a lot of like osteoporosis effects in like people. And even like the statistic right here, 80 to 90% of patients do not actually receive adequate treatment even after they find out like they have osteoporosis like effects and like even if they have that disease. And so it's just weird how common it is and like how little there's research
Yeah.
on
I
it.
thought it was like like you said, your dad's a doctor and like doesn't really do the supplements. So like
Yeah.
when people fracture bones, your doctor's not telling you like, oh, go take these vitamins. So like
That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if there's
Speed up the
preventatives,
process,
if there's
yeah.
preventatives,
Like
like
another
why
one.
aren't we getting told about them?
Oh, because it said in the article, I remember it said like, oh, in a conclusion, it says calcium and vitamin D supplementation initiated at the time of the fracture, abolished and even overcompensated the negative effects of chronic calcium and vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so
like,
that's evidence right there.
Evidence literally
Got it.
proves
It
that
works.
the supplements had like a serious effect on the healing of fractures, which is
Mhm.
crazy. Like I never would have thought that like
No,
even if you
it would
started at
improve
the
it
time in
more.
the fracture, like not even like beforehand, that it can actually like help. Definitely.
I also thought it was interesting, this is like kind of a side note, but the supplements, they said, there were no effects by day 10, like it was like a
Yeah,
delayed.
it was a
day
delayed
23 was, like when it started, but it was like
after.
better healing than like.
That kind of makes sense because it had to like, I don't know,
Had to
it's
kinda,
absorb
like,
into your body.
Yeah.
You can't just like start taking and like expect differences,
Yeah.
but it's like kind of adjust
I
over
think that's
time.
definitely what people like assume sometimes too, is they take it and they're
It's
like,
gonna,
where,
like,
what's it
right
in?
away.
Like,
Exactly, like,
they do,
yeah,
where's my,
where's
where's my
effects?
next? Yeah, but no, that makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
Another thing I thought was, I guess another thing something I was confused about by this though was, why they chose to do it on overreactomized
Yes.
mice.
I did not, that
Yes.
was like the first thing I was like, why?
I had to look up what it meant because
When I read it, it said to mimic like postnatal.
Like
Menopause,
postmenopause,
yes,
right?
they did
Yeah.
mention that in the
Like
background
estrogen.
of
Yes.
But it
the
was very
article.
It was
Yeah.
very
Very
brief,
brief.
and I feel like that's like
Like-
something kind of, you think you'd want male and female kind of
Yes.
deal, so it sounded like, I mean, they didn't specifically say, but if they're saying ovectomy mice, only women have ovaries, so like it can't be like male mice. So like, does that mean their
And
whole,
they took them.
their whole experiment was based on female mice, and if it is, like,
Yeah.
how does that
Yeah,
affect
why
the
can't
that's
they
what I
just
was
use male mice?
I was
Or why
confused
is she
about how that would
combining
like
them, doing some
apply to
females, some
humans.
Right.
100%,
Or if
yeah.
like
If
even
they're
gender
testing it only
affects it.
females.
Well, and it never said in the background that like this is most common in females. It just said
Yeah.
that there's an increased risk with
Postmenopausal
postmenopausal
like
women
lack
with
of
estrogen
estrogen, yeah.
decline. So I
Yeah.
know, so like we found out that they were replicating that, but like they didn't really say why they chose
Yeah,
that target group.
because women aren't the only ones like to
That's
get.
right.
Yeah.
And also
osteoporosis,
from
men
like
still do.
these findings, like how can, if you've only tested on females and even females without ovaries, without estrogen, like how
Yeah.
can you apply that to
To,
like
like, a human.
everyone, like
I was
all
gonna
these
say, do you guys think the results would be different in either male mice or like female mice with
I
ovaries
feel
still?
like there would be.
I feel like there could
difference.
definitely be some
Yeah.
discrepancies.
Yeah, like a slight.
Cause think about, it almost makes sense because like, think about, they're not producing estrogen, which is a
Yeah.
hormone, and then you're taking the supplements. I wonder how it would be different in
With,
like
like, their
younger
hormones.
female
Yeah.
mice.
Yeah.
Or in men, because our hormones are so completely different.
Yeah, like
Like what if the
testosterone,
supplements
how does
Yeah.
that impact
don't
it?
work in
Like, what if
regular
they-
females?
yeah,
Or
or-
like they work more in men.
Mhm.
Like that's definitely something I think if they were to do this
Also,
experiment
just in
again.
general, I think, well, how does our estrogen affect our bones? Like, I don't understand that.
You know, I don't either.
Yeah, I think
They
they could have
just-
elaborated on that a little more.
Because that was kind of just like a
Yeah.
random little thing.
Yeah,
Wait,
Yeah, they're.
what?
I
It's like,
agree.
I wonder
throw that in there, right?
They're like catering to the older age or the older age group.
I
think
didn't say
because-
how old the mice were though.
They
No.
didn't, but
No.
I think they're catering
they
more
were, like,
because
18
weeks.
osteoporosis-
Age 18 weeks.
18
18 weeks.
That's
Hmm.
not very,
That's
that's,
not very
that's
old.
literally like a
Is that
4-month-old.
But like
Yes.
for women to be post-menopause, that's like 40, 50.
I think
40, 50.
osteoporosis
yeah,
is
right.
more common in like older
Yeah.
individuals, but I
Exactly, that's-
think they could have geared it towards like women and men. Like
Yeah.
That was the main
comparison
thing.
would have made the article better too.
And I'm surprised
Yeah.
they could have
See
done
the
the whole
application.
thing with male and female together.
They should
and,
have,
like,
what they
And
should
see
have
the
done,
differences in how
Yeah.
that applies to like humans, because I feel like they didn't explain a lot how that would apply to
Apply
like.
to-
They didn't.
They would have to
yeah.
do obviously like a
Yeah.
case study, but
Yeah.
why wouldn't you do some male like you break, you have your control groups, you have 3 different groups, supplemental, deficient, and control. Like, why don't you have an equal number of, like, let's say 5 male mice in each group, 5 regular female mice with their ovaries, and then 5
yeah.
ovectomy without their ovaries, like estrogen deficient. So,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
that's
think-
just a good question. for
just
them.
in general, I know it's not in
Yeah.
stuff, so.
Yeah, I don't think we'll find it.
And I'm looking at like more of the things they tested, and I'm like interested in why they they chose specific stuff. Like they tested I mean, some of the stuff makes sense. Like they
Oh.
tested PTH. We saw that osteoclast,
Yeah.
osteoblast.
That is what I found really interesting, because we had just learned about the
Yes.
homeostasis
Yeah,
and like
and it,
seeing
like-
that visual like diagram right
Mhm.
studying before the exam,
Yeah.
which is like it's increased above 10 milligrams per dilator or whatever, like your parathyroid gland like
Releases.
expresses more, and then you have
Yeah.
more
They also-
So
osteoclast.
that it
It
absorbs.
breaks down the bone so you get more
Yeah.
calcium into your blood so your body can absorb it. Like I thought that was
Yeah.
cool because I was like, we literally had just like
Yeah, so it
just
actually
studied
made
that.
sense when they said that. I was like, wait, I
I was
know
like,
what that
ooh,
means.
It's just like
I just
like
studied
the
that.
callus and stuff.
Yeah.
That was, I think,
Yes.
I thought it was interesting, like with the callus though, that the mice with the deficient diet had like a reduced bone mass because it was taking calcium from the other
From the
bones
bones
to
to like
heal like
Yeah.
the fractured one, which kind of shows like the body prioritizes like healing the fractures versus like the
I feel like it
like the health
your
of the other
wounds.
bones.
Mhm.
That's just something like I wonder, that's something that like, I wonder if
Like,
it
why does
applies
it do-
to us
Yeah,
in
and like
real
why does it
life.
do that?
Like, does that happen in human bodies? I don't know. I don't think so. Like, I've never heard of that, but like, I don't know.
I feel like if you think about like just in general, like someone has a fracture, I feel like your body just naturally is like any wound you have,
It's
Mm.
your
gonna
body's gonna
naturally
like
heal it.
it's going to
Put
prioritize
the
and focus
yeah.
resources towards that. So if that means like I know this bone is healthy and
Weakening
this
the
bone's
other
weak,
ones.
Mm.
I'm gonna take from the healthy bone and like
I think that whole process is like really interesting. And
Yeah.
what it can like take from the other bones.
Yeah.
Into.
But also with the you were talking about like the calluses and stuff. Why was the deficient one? It was using more fibrous tissue. It wasn't just using the
Yeah, more
like
fibrous tissue versus.
versus the actual bone callus. Like
Yeah.
I was just like,
I thought that was interesting.
What I thought was interesting was they did gene analysis, like gene expression analysis as well. Like seeing if
Oh, yeah, that
like
was at
the
the end.
Yeah.
deficient mice like did alter their expression of like bone related genes like under deficiency conditions.
Yeah.
I think it said
Wait, it
that
says right
in-
here, sorry, I just found it said
Yeah.
to mimic chronic calcium vitamin deficient, D
Yeah.
deficient in postmenopausal females. We used overreactomized mice that received diet without cutting. So
So
it
this
was purposefully to
Purposely, but
mimic that.
I think it
they
was.
should have announced that more.
Yeah.
I think they could have made it more prominent, but also because they said there's like so little research and it's so important that they're doing this, I think it should have been
Been
geared
so
towards.
broad.
Because there is
Yeah.
like
'Cause
very little.
Yeah.
There's, like,
Why would you
they're
go- why
only
would you
doing
aim
research
for-
on postmenopausal
Yeah.
Why
women
would you aim
versus
for
Yeah.
such a specific
everybody.
target
I
when you
agree.
have such a broad area to cover?
I agree, definitely. Yeah, I think like, I don't know, what do you guys, if you were to change the experiment then and do something else, would you change the target group, like the mice?
Yes,
Or
for
would you
sure.
change like something else? Like I remember in the beginning of the article, it mentioned that they had already done another, a very similar experiment.
Yeah, I do
And they
remember
were like it said they investigated fracture healing in a mouse model of hypochlorhydria induced calcium
Oh, I struggled
malabsorption.
with that word. What did that even?
Yeah,
I did not.
I wanna
love
say
that.
malabsorption is like bad
Bad
absorption, so I
absorption.
think it's like. I didn't look it up actually, but I just was thinking like, they already tested something similar, but instead of testing a different, like, they use the same variables in this experiment, but just tested a different type of calcium deficiency.
Yeah.
I feel like if I were to do this experiment again, I agree, like, I feel like they should change the target.
To like a more
To a
wide.
more-
I would do
yeah,
more
wide.
mice. Why
I feel like
not
it's
so specific?
I feel like it's easier to have like one group because then you can put like all of your focus in that, but I think it would
Well,
be more
especially-
helpful to like real life applications and like changing the treatment of like
Yeah.
osteoporosis to
Yeah.
have like a full wide scale of
I
like
think you
men,
would,
women.
yeah, and
age
having
groups,
a more
different.
specific like control group like this is only. I was gonna say the mouse without ovaries, like just the mice without ovaries. I feel like their like findings would be a lot more consistent with each other rather than if they had to throw like testosterone
Yeah.
into the thing, estrogen into the thing, like because those all could react different, and so that could honestly make their data look less strong.
That's true.
I think
If
there's
they're
like
having
good
such
reason
great
to have
variabilities.
Yeah.
I think so too, but maybe what they should do is just basically copy paste this thing 3 times and just see how it affects the different, like, the male mice versus the female mice
Yeah.
with estrogen, and then you've already done this study with the.
I also,
Yeah,
as like a question I had on the different
Yes.
like groups, kind of like going to side thought like, what about the other minerals and vitamins like involved in bone growth and
Wait,
healing?
because isn't there that
Like
vitamin
vitamin
K
K,
is a
magnesium.
Yeah, the one that said,
Things like
helps,
that,
but
like-
wasn't necessary.
Yeah,
for
but what are
calcium
the
absorption.
impacts of like having that too? Because they didn't really,
They didn't talk about
they
those.
didn't
so-
look into
did
that
not
at all.
Yeah, for sure.
So would that be something to like throw into like the supplements or the supplemental group and they were just feeding them like way more
They
calcium?
could
way
add
more-
another test group with, instead of the supplements being just
Just
vitamin D, calcium, they could add a supplemental group.
Because there was magnesium, wasn't some of that stuff, or like the
Magnesium.
omega-3 fatty acids,
Yeah.
those help your
And then
bones.
also like
Smaller ones.
hormones.
Just hormones in general.
Yeah, definitely, because I think like that. Okay, well, they are mice, so we don't
That
know
is
that this
true.
has anything to do with humans technically yet. We don't, but it's definitely like something super interesting because like we already said, like supplements are such a big thing now. It like definitely makes you think like how much you could do by simply just like taking.
Yeah,
That brings me to,
like in the
one
morning.
of the questions I had of like after reading this, like have you guys thought about, I mean, I know they are mice and it's
Yeah.
still such little research, but like would you guys think about like how you would change your diet? Maybe you add more vitamin D, add
For
more
sure,
like some
yeah.
supplements. Or like thinking of those like heavy vitamin D, calcium foods, just making sure you're getting lots of those.
Yeah.
I think it was like interesting and it's definitely something that more people would take into consideration if there was more like widespread
Research
research
done.
on it.
Yeah, I agree.
More
Have
information spread.
There's no like signs of like not enough calcium or
Yeah,
vitamin D. Like,
they were
when
saying
you
like
started
someone
to
So
show
you wouldn't
it,
know until
they were
it's
saying
too
like
late.
you wouldn't know
know.
until you fractured a bone and even then like
Yeah.
the I mean the
Yeah.
doctors aren't gonna be like, oh, go take a vitamin D and like some calcium like supplements. Like that's not.
I wonder
if you feel like they should, yeah.
They tested what?
I wonder if they tested it on the
To
mice
see if
before
they
to
were-
see they were like deficient or like
Because that
deficient.
could also.
That could
I
be a
don't think
good
they did.
question.
I think you know what they did because they were really young mice, right?
They were
were-
like
they
18
were-
weeks.
I think they
But
just
is that like an
immediately
adult age
started them
for
off.
Yeah.
But I think they like immediately started them off with a deficient diet is
Yeah,
what they
yeah,
said.
like from
It was
birth
based off
to-
their diet. So it is
Mhm.
interesting because like when you think of it, you know how the doctors are always like drink your milk. It is a lot based off of our diets because like you can't absorb all the
Yeah.
vitamin D from the
Mhm.
sun
Yeah.
because we're like always inside. So I don't know.
I did think that was interesting of
Yeah.
just like how much your diet plays a
Yeah.
role into your body
Yes.
health. Like
For sure.
I know everyone talks about eating healthy, but it's just
Yeah.
like no, like it
Mhm.
actually does help. And I think just in general, like I think more people need to be shed light on how important your diet is.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
like making
And-
sure you're getting those different vitamins because it really
Yeah.
overall
It does
will help you.
impact, like,
It does
your
help.
healing and growth.
Yeah.
And on like that, I also put like a question was what numbers or like levels are they considering deficient? Like,
That's
if
okay.
I
Is there
didn't
is there
know
like
how
a
old you
range
Is there like a certain
Yeah.
range that
of
they're
like
considering?
this mouse has I don't know, 70% calcium what
Yeah.
it should? Is that deficient versus a mouse
Yeah,
that
so
has
it's like
Yeah,
75 or 40?
You're right, they didn't specify in the
Like, what was
article, and I feel like they should have, because, I mean, I guess it wouldn't apply to humans, because obviously we're different. But I think there's definitely, like, your blood tests, like, can show,
Yeah,
oh, you're
show.
deficient in this vitamin, this hormone, like, whatever, like, you can get tests on that, so there definitely is, like, a
There's a-
threshold
Yeah, a
value.
cutoff of like
Yeah.
what.
There's definitely like a
It's like a
set
marker.
like
Yeah.
range.
Yeah.
But they didn't like
But
specify that. So
Off
it's
of
just
that,
something.
I was like thinking how it maybe could help like for us to like develop something that can diagnose like bone stuff.
And they're like tests to like, I think there
to
are
see-
tests.
There
to see
are
if
bone
they
Yeah,
have
density
right.
tests, for
Okay.
sure,
But it's
yeah.
not common because like you're not gonna know
That's
like
not something you would.
I think it's like
like
if
on-
they-
you're not gonna feel if your bones
Yeah.
are weak
Yeah,
until
you,
you
like
break
they said, you
something.
won't know until
I
you
think it's
break
once
it.
you break, if, I feel like it's when you're a child and you're coming in consistently, like having broken bones and stuff, the doctor would do a test like that.
Feel like
Yeah.
If this is like
something's not
the
normal.
same kid at like 10 years old and
With,
this is
like-
their third broken bone.
Yeah.
Or
like
like it's just they
something-
fall and it's not even like a huge like
Yeah.
oh my gosh like they're
Yeah,
in
it's
an accident or something. It's like they just fall and like put their arm down, boom,
Yes,
broken. And it's
stuff like that,
oh,
where
your
it's
body should
like-
be able to absorb some of that
Mhm.
like if your bones
Yeah,
are strong enough,
that's
like they
amazing.
should be able to absorb some of that.
Yeah, there's definitely cases like that, but that just shows like if you don't have symptoms like that and it's not like that like much of a deficit, people who are still in a deficit, but it has like you wouldn't know that, like it can still affect you and you wouldn't know that, just based off of
Especially-
like you wouldn't know to change your diet necessarily.
Well, especially considering like your bones, like you don't see your bones ever.
Yeah.
Like you see your skins, like you can have like I don't know, eczema or what, like something like that. So you
Something that
notice
you can
it,
see.
you can
Yeah.
see, and like, or like even like acne and stuff. It's like, okay, something's not right now. My hormones are thrown off because you can visibly see it, but you cannot visibly see your bones. Like you just can't. So I think that's part of it too. Is like, and you don't feel it. Like even just feeling like, oh yeah, my bone feels a little,
It feels
feels a
like-
little weak down there. Like, I just think that's part of
Yeah.
it, and that's why I think there needs to be more like, because like honestly, before even reading this, like my eyes have been open so much of like how actually your bone. I was just like, oh, they do their own thing, like they're
I'm
just
like,
chilling.
I haven't
Yeah.
taken
It'll
any
feel like-
supplements, like, how's my bone doing?
Yeah, because I think like
Exactly.
if we
Something
point
to
out,
think about.
yeah, if we point out like specific evidence, like what did you guys find was the most compelling evidence in the article? Like looking back, like I would say in the article, like when I was reading after the fracture happened,
Yes.
and you went back and it showed the differences and they tested bone mineral density,
Mhm.
bone volume,
Yeah.
tissue volume,
Yes.
and then healed fractures. 77, it shows the highest one was the supplemental group with the supplements.
Mhm.
And that was kind of crazy considering like versus the control group.
That's what I was thinking, because they had started behind. Like if you
Yeah.
really think about it, like they had started
They were in a deficit.
After the fracture.
behind,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
because they had not had the supplements, and that just, I think that's just where
Because
it's
they
just
weren't
like,
taking the supplements, but they.
so
that-
you're
what I-
deficient,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
you're playing catch up, and
And
even
then
with the
you're
catch up, like
after the
you already
fracture.
had passed them.
Mhm.
Which that's what I found interesting, because you had that in the healed fractures. You also had that in the, what was it?
The thing is, they
tissue
didn't have,
volume.
they had better, what was interesting is they had better healed fractures, more healed fractures, but the control group was had slightly more bone volume and bone mineral density. The supplemental group was better than the deficit group, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, yes.
But the control group was better at bone mineral density. But then like, I'm thinking like, then why did like the supplemental group, how did it have more healed fractures?
Yeah, like a.
When you look at the like photos,
Oh, yeah.
and that just shows like, I'm not gonna show the camera, but like,
Yeah,
you guys
it's
can see, like,
articles.
but it's like the supplemental is just, you can see exponentially
They're
thicker.
Yeah.
It's like the deficient's like a little strain, and then you have
Yeah.
the controls like a little bit more, and like they're pretty similar, but you can definitely see like the supplemental has a more like well-rounded covered thickness to it. Like there's not as many gaps and holes versus the control, which I just think, like looking at the deficient, and you're like, oh my gosh, the supplemental kind of started out like that, and it
Yeah,
surpassed everything. Is just like, that was just really interesting.
that's what I thought,
Yeah.
like, the biggest thing that, like,
Mhm.
opened my
The
eyes
article
was
proves,
like,
yeah.
the supplemental healed better
Mhm.
than, like, the
Mhm.
control group who just has, like, a regular diet with.
It was just the fact they had to play catch up, and I just,
Yeah,
that's
it
just
played
like
catch up
mind
and
boggling to
it
me.
was still
It was still better.
better.
Yeah, they had, the supplemental group had a lot less PTH than they had less PTH than the control,
Mhm.
slightly less osteoclast than the control, and
That
then,
just shows that your body is doing better.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Like
and then
homeostasis
like
wise, like your body's doing better.
very, very close to the same osteoblast. It actually wasn't significant in their data because the bars overlapped. So that was really interesting to see. Cause it definitely made me think through like, it's kind of inverse like osteoclast versus osteoblast.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, like, honestly, that's what made sense to me too. I think we
Yeah.
talked about it a little bit in the beginning of like, we just had learned about that, but like
Yeah.
seeing how many like osteoclasts the deficient had releasing all the time, because they were trying to break down their
Mhm.
bones to make sure that
Yeah.
other areas were getting
Mhm.
calcium as well. Like
Mhm.
having calcium in your blood, and then you had the control and supplemental group, which definitely had more osteoblasts, which was just like building and all that, and they had less osteoclasts because their body's having enough
Yeah,
calcium in
it's
the
not
blood. They're
breaking
not
down
needing to
their
break
own
down their
bones.
own bones to
Yeah.
have more.
which is
Yeah.
kind of like, I guess, like, real life application is like, they said osteoporosis patients are at risk for like a vicious cycle of fractures because they
Mhm.
obviously don't know that they're vitamin C deficient, and it's like taking away from their other bones, so then those other bones are more at risk.
They're
Yeah.
weaker.
They'll get
Yeah.
fractured
It just
next,
continues,
and
like,
yeah.
you fracture your
That makes
wrist or
sense.
whatever.
It's
it
healthy
takes it
now,
from your
this one's
arm, then you
unhealthy.
break your arm,
Mhm.
then it takes it from the wrist that's already deficient, and like,
Yeah,
things
Yeah.
like that.
it just weakens. It's just like a weak.
That was something
never-ending
super
loop.
interesting that I
That was,
never
like,
knew about.
An interesting way that they kind of like
Yeah.
applied it to actual patients.
It helps you understand
Yeah.
it too. Like you
It
break it down into a
Puts it all
chain.
together,
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
makes more sense.
Mhm. definitely. All the graphs in this article and the pictures were really helpful. I feel like I'm a visual learner and I
didn't
like,
understand the picture. Like
Yeah.
I didn't understand this one with the red. Was that like, was that, I think, was this one just showing
Or
how
bone density.
figure three? I think was that one just showing the
that was
osteoclast?
fractured femurs, percentage of bone, cartilage, and fibrous tissue. So I think it shows, wait, but
When it
what's
shows the
red?
osteoclast per bone and the osteoblast, I think is the red, just like what's this?
That's what I'm
And you have like the
confused
little
about.
circles.
Oh,
that?
wait, no, the red
Bone?
is, the spongy bone and hemopoptosis. It is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's-
that's red
that's-
marrow. That's
Yes.
red bone marrow, cause in the
That's where the
femur,
blood cells
that's
get
the
produced.
top of the
from.
femur. I remember,
Okay.
yeah, in there they said in their testing, the trabecular bone was the lumbar vertebrae and then the cortical bone was the femur. So they took,
Yeah,
they measured like spongy and
The
compact bone.
Okay.
Yeah.
that
like-
makes more sense.
Yeah, that I didn't.
And you can just,
understand that
just
better.
looking at the graphs too, you can see how like more chaotic, honestly, that's like the best word I can describe it,
Yeah.
like deficiency one, it's
Mhm.
like, there's just so much more going on, and you can see like the supplemental like looks like the most under control.
And yeah.
Until you
the
get to the
supplemental and control are, like, put
D23, like,
together.
yeah, you have control, looks more put together with the D23 trap one versus the supplemental, seems like it just like more combined.
Yeah, it says the representative images of the fractured callus stained with whatever. Wait, what's a callus?
The callus is like, isn't that what, when your bone's healing, it's like going, it's like the,
It's like a soft.
Yeah, it's like a, think
Oh,
like
when
cast
it's
kind of.
healing
Yeah.
after the
It's like the bone, and then it's before the remodeling, so it's just throwing all like the
Oh,
bone building
okay.
stuff there, and then the last step is remodeling, and then it just like, it's like filed out the proper shape.
Okay,
I
okay.
think.
I had like a question about the experiment. It's kind of off topic, but
Mhm.
because the mice were in such a controlled environment, they
Mhm.
didn't like work out or anything. So like
That's
I wonder
true.
if like their diet, it's very controlled, so like other environmental factors. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like
that
we
could
walk
change
on
the, like,
campus so much, so
trajectory.
like the more you
But
work
they
out
have
that,
muscle
like
wheels.
Muscle mass.
yes, and like bone.
Cause
strength.
muscle puts a strain, it strains your bones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like being outside, like, yeah, we get it from the sun and we get vitamin D from.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
these
and
mice
like
are
how
getting
so
sun
much, and
exposure.
we work
Does that
out.
change?
True.
Like,
Like,
does that?
There's just a
impact
bunch of
mice
different
versus
Yeah.
humans?
factors, I guess, from the experiment that
Mhm.
like you can't
Yeah, they did
necessarily
keep it all the
apply.
same
They
for the
did
mice,
keep-
but like in a different experiment they could. Well, I guess the thing is though, they can't really test that on mice without like, then that's not really controlled.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that changes
That's the
the
only-
control
There's too many
group.
Yeah.
There
variabilities
is too.
involved.
I just think there's a lot of variables in like humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of like
Something
that
that
application
thing.
from a very controlled environment mice too, like how does that apply?
That was
to
another thing, because there's
Yeah.
so
humans
many
that are
different
outside?
genetic aspects
exercising?
that people have, like, there's so many
That's
different
true.
things, like, is
Yeah.
race playing involved, race and ethnicity, like, does that play
Mhm.
involved, like, just the fact of different gender, like male versus female, like, in this, I guess we already
I
kind of
guess
talked about how
yeah.
this was just female
Difference
oriented.
in hormones,
Yes.
absorbing vitamins, that
Use of,
stuff.
like,
Like
different-
athletes
Yeah.
versus.
Yeah, like how
versus
much
a
you
person who's
exercise a
has to,
day.
like,
Yeah.
sun
For sure.
exposure, people who live
Yeah.
more towards the equator, they get more sun versus like people like me who's like up north.
Yeah, like
We're not getting as much sun,
Yeah,
especially
like
we're not-
cloudy areas versus very sunny. like,
Exactly.
warm.
So there's just so many different, I think, variables that it's hard to like. There
See
just needs to
how
be more
exactly
research.
it
and
Yeah,
applies.
definitely.
But also you can't just make people, that's another thing too, is like you can't just like.
You can't just like break
deficiency
someone.
on-
Yeah.
Because
You
they
can't
they
just
just
on
like
that.
broke the
Yeah.
mice
Oh
and
my
like.
gosh, that was one of the
what
things
if
they
they
just
just,
like,
like,
I was just like, this has to be like animal.
So I think like an application, like a case study or like
Yeah.
application to humans would be like harder to do because you have to get people that are willing
Breaking
to like
bones.
break a bone and be
I
really.
think they could probably
deficient,
just
or they
find
could
people
just
that have
change
very,
osteoporosis
like, I bet,
and
like,
things that.
if they were to do a study like that, they could just find people who've broken bones in a certain amount of time and
Yeah.
like study instead.
Or they could do the bone density
But-
test of like, you can just
Yeah.
like test a healthy person's bone or like.
Yeah, they
whatever
could do it
their-
without studying fractures.
could
Technically,
just
that
do
was a
the
different
density.
variable that they tested. I guess the first test to humans could be without like a fracture.
Just the
Yeah.
bone mineral
With-
density.
yeah.
I think like somebody with osteoporosis, like
if you could get them to be like, oh, they're vitamin D and calcium deficient versus like a control group and a supplement.
Mhm.
Like kind of, they'd have to obviously.
Yeah, 'cause
be
they
willing to do
tested-
that,
Yeah.
But I think that would
But-
kind of change,
Mhm.
could change the results
Yeah.
just based on like going outside and exercising,
Yeah.
like kind of what they're doing in their daily lives.
And
And with
for
that
sure.
too, like, because we talked about it earlier, how they didn't really have like set thresholds and cutoffs, like, I think that's something
Yeah.
that would need to be incorporated, like, this person has. You have to be a certain percentage, your bone density should be a certain percentage, or you need to make sure you're only getting this certain percentage of calcium that rather than what your body needs, just like make
Yeah.
sure it's consistent, because
Yeah.
like, you could have people, they're calling themselves deficient. And like
But
they're having,
They don't know.
exactly,
Mhm.
Cause I mean, they were saying there's so many people that don't know they're deficient and like, they don't know
What
what to
is
do to
defined as
prevent a
deficient,
break, but
exactly.
like, I don't know what's considered deficient in like calcium or vitamin D, so do I, like, should I take supplements or is my diet doing enough for me?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I
That,
think
like
like
that.
I didn't realize how important vitamin D was in the process. I feel like
didn't either.
when I first
No.
like growing up, they say
Calcium,
milk
calcium,
has
calcium.
calcium. They only
They don't
mention
say vitamin
calcium.
D.
They don't say
Yeah.
you need vitamin D to absorb the calcium.
Yeah.
They don't ever say that. They're not like, oh, drink milk outside. Like,
Yeah.
they don't ever say that. So that was definitely something I think that this article really showed importance of. It's like both calcium and vitamin D together
Yeah.
need to be like.
Yeah, they didn't just be like,
increased.
oh, it's just this one.
Yeah.
We're not separating, like they are hand in hand.
Yeah, like they're essential for like reducing
They
the
rely
risk
on
of
it.
like
Yeah.
another fracture. And I also, the preventing like post-traumatic bone loss.
Mm.
Yeah, I
I
was
thought that
just
part was
about to
interesting too. They didn't like elaborate
What
a
is
ton on it.
like, what is considered post-traumatic?
I
bone
looked it
loss?
up.
After a bone's been healed.
Yeah, I
something?
It's like
looked it
just
up
after a
and I
bone.
think it was, it's like removing like bone parts like faster than it's healing.
Like the osteoclast.
Yeah. Like
I
removing
did
it
read
down
about that.
without-
I
So
had
many
to look it up,
osteoclasts
so
is
that's
also
definitely
something.
something that I was confused about, that
I
they could
did.
They could elaborate.
a little bit more.
There was
Yeah.
something, this was definitely more like, they kind of had the impression that like, kind of already knew what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Going into the article, which like, okay, granted, it's a scientific report, like, yes,
think
but
it
at the
was-
same time, they could have
Yeah.
elaborated a little.
I think it was
Yes.
targeted towards, I think, other
People who research,
researchers.
yeah.
Like
Too, like-
looking at this subject.
Because there
Yeah.
is so little to like,
There's already so
hey,
little to
here's
know
like
about.
a baseline.
Yeah, they were like, we already tested this, now we're testing this.
Yeah, and like, oh, like have this, someone can read it and be like, oh, I'll test on like male mice and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I agree, it definitely wasn't for like just the public, like
Mhm.
to read, and like, it wasn't honestly super like informational towards the public, but like that, like, I feel like it's good that we knew what they meant by a lot of this stuff,
Mhm.
We knew
and so
what they
we
were-
took it that way and we could apply it to like
Exactly.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Cause like, I don't know, you threw me this article like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I wouldn't,
Like,
I-
I'd be like, oh,
I
I don't
wouldn't
know what that
understand
means,
that.
but like, no, we literally had just done the phone.
Yeah,
So I
no,
was like,
it's
oh,
after
okay,
that.
this
It
is
makes
tying
sense.
all together.
What
For
were
sure.
like some of the applications that y'all like took away from it? Because we can't understand it a little bit more than like
Yeah.
a standard.
Honestly,
Well, definitely like
it's
you
just-
need supplements.
Yeah,
I was
for
just gonna say
sure.
like the importance of supplements and
Honestly, yeah.
making sure you're getting enough vitamin D to be able to have the calcium, because it also makes me like freak out a little bit. It's just like, oh, like, I don't want my bones to just like
I know,
break later on.
I need to.
And what
try
if
something
like
on
you
this.
just cater your diet to like calcium and vitamin D, and is that only enough or do you need more supplements?
That's kind of the
Well, yeah,
biggest, like,
because it's
is the
scary
natural diet.
coming
Yeah.
here. I feel like, because growing up, I never broke a bone. I always
Yeah,
drank
me
so
neither.
much milk, and I don't know if that was correlated or not.
You
never know.
You never
Don't
know.
know.
That's- I
But
think-
now, like, I don't drink milk. Like, if
Yeah,
I
I
have
don't-
milk
I
here,
don't
it'll
need
go
to, like, go
bad
buy
before I,
it.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
buy milk at the store for my house here. And like, I don't necessarily have like a ton of veggies every day with like all the calcium and stuff. I don't target my diet to these vitamins.
So it's like,
No.
am I getting enough
So,
in my diet?
yeah.
That's my thing here, is I'm just like, oh, I'll be in the sun. That'll do it.
And like, I'll go walk to
Yeah.
class.
Yeah.
Honestly, if they did a study, like if they moved to humans and they did a study on, they could do a study just college students versus like another.
Or something where there's literally like no sun,
I'm
like Alaska during the
curious too,
winter.
diet wise, like
Yeah.
college students versus like
regular.
And
very-
very-
No,
like
it
an
is,
adult
you
work,
think,
yeah.
yeah.
Our college students
I
more
bet there's
efficient
a
because
difference.
we're like,
Eating.
people aren't cooking all the
Yeah.
time. We're
And
like
we're
not
stressed
eating,
constantly.
right?
We're constantly,
one
like, does stress have to
play
do with play? Cause
something.
I know there's things with stress.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
so-
Well, stress fractures aren't
That's like-
necessarily mental.
little-
No, it's from body stress, but
But
like,
because bodily stress impacts like hormones, things like that. So how
Yeah.
does that apply to
yeah.
osteoporosis and like breaking bones? I think
I
there's a lot
wonder-
of like
I
questions.
wonder if supplements like, or the fractures like react to the same like supplements, or like if different fractures heal faster, if you just
Like different areas of the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they only tested the femur.
Femur's a
Yeah,
pretty
I think
big bone.
also
They
just
only
like,
tested.
Yeah, they
the other
definitely
one
did.
is, like,
I guess it's hard in
Because
like mice
there's-
to do a smaller bone.
Yeah,
because
like
they're
your
so big.
smaller
But I think like smaller bones, like
Especially seeing your clavicle is
Like
like the most
clavicle,
commonly
yeah.
fractured
Yes.
bone, like
It's so tiny.
it's so
And
so
unprotected.
small and it just takes
Yeah.
the most compact, like it takes the most force because it goes all the way up your body. Like, does that heal differently than let's say your fibula
the femur or like,
Yeah.
or your femur?
or like
Right.
flat bones. like
Well, it
flat
definitely
bones,
does
or,
also
like,
because like
irregular-
imagine breaking
The
your leg, you
movement.
can't, it's hard to fully get off of your leg and like like hold it stable while it's healing versus like your forearm. You could
Yeah,
just like in a sling,
it's
it will
like
be
Cast
moving.
it, if you
Yeah.
cast it, your
Yeah.
bones don't rotate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Also like
Exactly.
muscles wise, I guess because we said like athletes and like who's exercising more,
Mhm.
but like if you have larger muscles than like someone else, how does that have like an
Is it,
impact
there
on
was
that?
a, there
'Cause
was
mice
a
are, like,
knee
mice are-
condition.
Itty bitties,
Yeah.
they don't have like
They don't have muscles.
like huge.
Yeah.
It's in between
Like,
different
in comparison
sports,
to
like you
us.
play, like I grew up playing soccer, like
Yeah.
saying my quadriceps, so like,
Mm.
like that's just a
Yeah.
bigger muscle, so does that mean like,
Rather
or
than,
my,
like-
is my femur stronger because it's getting pulled up
Right.
by those muscles, like
Like
is
how does
that tension
impact?
between how the strength of your muscles, like playing effect of like conditioning your bones in a way, like your bones have to be
Yeah, that's what I
stronger
was
because
wondering.
your muscles
It
apply
does.
more.
Is
I
it
bet-
muscle helps your bones or muscle doesn't help your bones? Because like,
Yeah, because it is like.
I know that they can protect it, like what I'm thinking of, and this is different because I've never broken bones, but I've like sprained my ankle because my muscles, I was so tired towards the end of my game, my muscles were like so depleted and tired that like it left
It's not
the
like,
strain, it left my ankle weaker so that when I rolled it, it like,
Wasn't
you know, stretched
contracted,
my
yeah.
ligament because my muscle
Yes.
wasn't strong enough to protect it from not rolling.
Yeah.
So I rolled my ankle, so like, is that like
yeah.
your muscles that are weaker, people that have less muscles, like their bones are more prone to fracture, or is it like, wasn't someone mentioned like too big of bones put too much pressure or like?
Because there was, I'm trying to remember, there's that
stress on
new
the
condition,
bones.
it's like, I forgot what it's called, but it's when your patella, like, pieces, or it's like something of your
Break
bone
off?
breaks off because of the force
Mm.
from your muscles itself.
That's what I wonder too with like osteoporosis, like patients, because
Yeah.
they have like less
Yeah.
bone density and they're more fragile, like, because the pulling out their muscles kind of like impact
Yeah, like
those
would they be allowed to
fractures.
play sports?
Yeah,
That's true, because think about it, if they fall, like, boom, that's broken bone right there, like.
and they don't know that they need vitamin D and calcium, just, so it's just.
Kids.